We have been trying to warn everybody. And Clay and I have been aligned on this from the very beginning. Even we were doing our own separate radio shows. There is a fundamental refusal by the lockdowners to look at facts and to change their opinions and change their approach based upon what we've learned. We run the experiment. The data comes in. They don't care. They want to put Fauci on TV. They want to listen to whatever he says. And they're not letting this stuff go. They're not adapting their policies to new information and just the reality of what's happening all around us. And the most perfect example of this that I can think of is the fact that Los Angeles County is now reinstituting a mask mandate even for vaccinated people indoors. Clay, you're going to have to help me not lose my mind today. It hasn't happened in New York yet. We're probably next. And other major cities across the country, the lockdowners won't let it go.
I think there are so many people that are just steaming mad over this all over the country listening to us right now. When the news came down yesterday, I was live on the air about to do my television show on FS1, which originates from Los Angeles. And I'm flying into LA next week on Wednesday to finish up season 3 of that television program. And even people, Buck, at this point, who would consider themselves to be left-wingers are fed up beyond measure over this insanity. There is no reasonable justification. Let's talk about California for a moment. California, Gavin Newsom, governor who's got his recall election in September, they wagged their finger at the rest of the country and talked about how good they were doing, how much they were following the science. Buck, you look at the data like I do, and it feels like almost no one else in media even bothers to do. California, despite all of the stringent lockdowns, despite the mask policing ad infinity, which feels like, has almost identical results to Texas and to Florida. And I think the question that you asked is the key one, Buck. Is LA's mask requirement an outlier that other places are not going to follow? Or is it going to be sort of the canary in the coal mine? And what we're going to do, and this is what I'm afraid of, and this is what we've been saying, is that as we move into fall and as we move into winter, when viruses naturally increase, slowly, many blue parts of the country, which have a lot of red people who live there, are going to reinstitute mask mandates. More people, Buck, in California, it's based on population to a certain extent, voted for Donald Trump in California than voted for Donald Trump in Texas. It's a crazy stat. It's true. And there are tons of our listeners right now in the LA area that are losing their minds over the insanity of their leadership mandating masks.
Meanwhile, the crazy libs, not their technical term, but the blue check MDs who are going on TV, Clay, they view this as an opportunity to show everybody how brave and righteous and, dare I say, sanctimonious the public health establishment remains after, at every stage of the pandemic, getting things very, very wrong. Here's the kind of stuff that they are saying now about the reimposition of the mask mandate in L.A. County.
Let me just say, even more than Los Angeles County, by the way, I really do praise the public health officials there. They're sticking their necks out on the lines. They're not popular people these days. But I would say we can look to other countries. We can look to Israel. We can look to parts of what the UK has had to do. Ignore what Boris Johnson has said, but look at what local public health officials and Ministry of Health officials are doing on the ground there. Australia, other parts of the EU, they are kind of what we would call canaries in the coal mine. They have put back in indoor masks, and it's simply for this reason. Vaccines do protect us. They protect us from hospitalization and death, as we've said. Unvaccinated people with a variant, Willie, that is novel, that we don't understand, that is highly transmissible, highly infectious, minute to give it to each other. What is the harm when you're with strangers to wear a mask indoors, especially in close contact settings? Why are we taking a risk that we don't need to take when we have a very simple preventive measure for now until we get more people vaccinated?
I'm going buck wild here, Clay. What is the harm? We're back at that. What's the big deal? Mask up, peasant. Double mask. Put it on the treadmill. You're going to have to calm me down from afar, man. I can't take it with these libs anymore. I can't
What
take
are you going to do? I mean, in all honesty, if you're right, because I want to talk about sports as an important signpost. In your city of New York, the New York Yankees are almost entirely vaccinated. Last night, there was only one Major League Baseball game. The Yankees were playing against the Red Sox. They canceled the game because 6 vaccinated Yankee players tested positive for COVID. Why in the world are we still testing in any way vaccinated people? But Buck, this is a question that I got asked almost immediately when I said I was going to LA. What do you do now if they reintroduce masks in cities? Like for me, for instance, when I land in LA, I'm going to Michigan this weekend. I'm going to Gretchen Whitmer land. I'm not excited about having to step foot in her state because of what an idiot she's been. But what do you do in LA for all of our listeners out there who are, I think, fed up going buck wild like you are? What's the answer, right? You have 3 options so far as I can tell. You can comply. You can walk in, not wear a mask. When you're told to wear a mask, you can just turn around and leave. Or you can, which I think is the worst option, kind of throw a fit, demand security, everything else. Like, I don't see, other than vote against Gavin Newsom, which I would encourage every single human who lives in California to be doing. What are your what can you do, Buck? That's what I hear so many people saying.
We are at the phase where mass noncompliance has to happen.
Yes,
and
I agree.
For people who live in Texas and Florida, and yes, that's right, Tennessee. God bless you. Yes. This is not as much, but we have a lot of our people right now, a lot of our team listening with us right now in New York and California and Illinois and New Jersey and even some states in the South that are much more purple, or, places like Virginia, for example, right? They're going to be looking at what happens in Los Angeles, and they're going to be looking at these different decisions made by their side, the Democrat side. And they're going to enforce this madness against people. And you're asking what to do? I've said this. In my building, initially in the pandemic in New York City, Clay, I didn't wear a mask walking in and out of the building because I'm like, this is idiotic.
Yes.
And the building staff didn't say anything to me because I'm nice to them and we're cool. But apparently the residents were complaining all the time. About me. I didn't know this. I was the only person. There were hundreds of people in the building. The only one who wasn't wearing a... Actually, there's one other guy. I think he was from Germany. Side note. But anyway, the 2 of us were the unmasked bandits. I'm not going to violate the building policy and get evicted because that's a pain and that's a little too much. But I'm just saying, man, if they start telling me if I go into a restaurant, I got to wear a mask again, I might be like, you know what, guys, call the police.
I'll go somewhere else.
I might get arrested.
You're going to be the call the police guy?
I might be the call the police guy at this point.
It's so, we went out to dinner right before we started the show, right? And New York was still coming out of the mask mandates. But we went to a steakhouse, walked up to the front, you're outside, and we're going to be seated indoors. And the girl at the front desk said, hey, can you put your mask on? And this, to me, has always been the most ridiculous of all the cosmetic theater. When you're at a restaurant, you wear your mask to the table and then you take it off immediately as soon as you sit down. There's no way, Buck. This is what gets me fired up. It's so stupid. There's no logical basis for it. And so my thing is going to be a little bit like yours. Like, people are already saying, hey, what are you going to do in LA? My wife makes fun of me because basically in Tennessee, I never did the mask thing, right? Like, I rarely go shopping, so it's not that big of a deal. And other than putting a mask on sometimes to go sit down at a restaurant, which I was willing to do for a couple of months, I always looked at it and thought it was stupid. Like, to go to the gym, for instance. My gym mostly stayed open. And Buck, they didn't require us to wear the mask during the workout, but they were like, hey, can you put a mask on when you walk in? And I'm like, what sense does that make?
This is all compliance training. It's like Pavlovian. You wear the mask, you listen to Fauci. You wear the mask, you do what you're told. And it's also meant to mitigate the unnecessary anxiety that so many people who are at low risk feel from this. You're basically doing it so that those who are, the snowflakes out there who watch too much MSNBC don't melt when they come within 10 feet of you. Clay, This fight, I've been telling everybody, people say, oh, why are you still on the fight is not over until they have to bend the knee based on the data and admit this mask stuff is total crap. Absolute malarkey. That's where I am, and that's where I'm going to be.